lost in thought, it actually causes a lot of suffering. We start seeing that when we go into trance, if we're sick, our mind fixates on how we're never going to get better and how something really terrible is happening inside us. If there's a relationship breakup, we fixate on how we're damaged goods in some way. The mind just goes and goes. If there's a conflict with someone else, our mind gets riveted on blame and on resentment and cycling through that. If we've been trying to diet and we break the diet, in our mind, we're in this spiral into being huge and everybody in the world seeing us a certain way. It's our minds are really, really, they terrorize us. And so we have to find a way out, and they create distance from others. When we're lost in our thoughts, our fear thoughts, we can't really see who's here. One of my favorite little stories, I'll read you. About a century or two ago, the Pope decided that all the Jews had to leave Rome, and naturally there was a big uproar from the Jewish community. So the Pope made a deal. He would have a religious debate with a member of the Jewish community, and if the Jew won, the Jews could stay. If the Pope won, the Jews would leave. The Jews realized they had no choice, so they picked a middle-aged man named Moshe to represent them, and Moshe asked for one addition to the debate. To make it more interesting, neither side was allowed to talk. The Pope agreed. Okay, the day of the great debate came, and Moshe and the Pope sat opposite each other for a full minute before the Pope raised his hand and showed 3 fingers. Moshe looked back at him and raised 1 finger. The Pope waved his fingers in a circle around his head, and Moshe pointed to the ground where he sat. The Pope pulled out a wafer and a glass of wine. Moshe pulled out an apple. The Pope stood up and said, "I give up. This man is too good. The Jews can stay." An hour later, the cardinals were all around the Pope asking him what had happened. The Pope said, "Well, first I held up 3 fingers to represent the Trinity." He responded by holding up 1 finger to remind me that there was still one God common to both religions. Then I waved my fingers around me to show him that God was all around us, and he responded by pointing to the ground, showing that God was also right here with us now. I pulled out the wine and wafer to show that God absolves us from our sins. He pulled out an apple to remind me of original sin. He had an answer for everything. What could I do? Meanwhile, the Jewish community had crowded around Moshe. What happened, they asked. Well, he said, first the Pope said to me that the Jews had 3 days to get out of here, and I told him that not one of us was leaving. He told me that this whole city would be cleared of Jews, and I let him know that we were staying right here. Yes, and then asked the crowd. I don't know, said Moshe. He took out his lunch, and I took out mine. So this is just a bit of a teaching on what happens when communications are going. We have these ideas about things. How much do they match reality, For many years, I had a T-shirt. I actually gave it away to one of our auctions, and it said, "Meditation, it's not what you think,"